Hello and welcome to History How-Tos, instructional guides by history teachers for history teachers. My name is Greg Thornton and this video today is going to be looking at displays. Is there any research behind what makes an effective display and how can we best maximise them within our classrooms? As always, this is the instructional sheet that goes with it, which can be downloaded from the How-Tos website. And I will essentially be talking through a lot of this information today and hopefully providing some clear, specific examples of how they can be used within the history classroom. Simple one to start off with, what are displays? Well, it's one that we probably don't really need to define. A classroom display is something that includes decorative items, useful information, or student work. We know that already. But our first question really is, what does the research say? Now, having a little delve into this, there's actually little extensive research into classroom displays at present. Now, there have been some small studies, and there have been some findings from, for example, the Clever Classrooms project that Salford University has done. But there isn't a great deal out there, and I think one of the things we can do is apply dual coding theory and cognitive load theory to help us think about classroom displays. So I'm going to quickly talk through some of the key points here, really. Well, the Clever Classrooms research, they found that actually there was a positive impact on students in terms of ownership and familiarity with the classroom if you display student work. So displaying their work in the classroom breeds a sense of ownership and kind of a buy-in to the classroom and the culture that you are trying to develop within the classroom. Secondly, Fisher et al. Found that, unsurprisingly, that decorated classrooms, highly decorated ones, can hinder learning because of the distractions. But they have said this does reduce over time. So at first, if a student are new to your class, yes, the highly decorated class might be a distraction and might cause them to lose focus. But as they use the environment more, they get used to it and it kind of becomes background noise, if anything. Thirdly, if you apply cognitive load theory to this, and if you think about cognitive load theory, there are two things that classroom displays can do. One is this thing called the redundancy effect. In essence, students are kind of there's too much redundant information going into their brain, and overloading their working memory. When you are teaching, you want students to listen to either you, look at a visualizer, or look at the board. And a display can kind of take away that focus and attention and kind of cause load. And we call it actually extraneous load. The idea is that there's too much going in. You're overloading the load of the cognitive load, the working memory of students, because there is too much going on in the classroom. So if you apply cognitive load theory, you need to be very careful about possibly the placement of your displays, so to kind of reduce the redundancy effect and extraneous load. And lastly, and linking onto that, actually, Hobbes has suggested that positioning is really important with displays. He said that you need to reduce distraction, so think about the positioning of that. So that's kind of what some of the little research says, and I'm kind of applying cognitive load theory here to thinking about displays. So just a brief bit about using classroom displays. So this is kind of stuff that I have gleaned from doing some reading and I think of my own practice, really. And one of the key things is that a lot of research, the research says that the front of your classroom, so the area in grey here, should kind of be kept as blank as possible, unless being used for regular reference. Whereas the bottom end, the back end of your classroom can use for any display that you want, really, because it's kind of out of sight of many of the students' eye lines. And there are four key things here that I think when using classroom displays that you should be really careful of and think about. One of these is size. How often do you see displays in classrooms, and I've been guilty of this, where I've printed out some student work and stuck it on a display. Well, only the student next to it can read it. So Oliver Caviglioli, in his wonderful book, Dual Coding for Teachers, he said that a minimum of 24 point size font should be used, so students anywhere in the classroom can read it. So that would involve, if you want to show a waggle, a worked example of excellent work, it needs to be big so students can read it. Secondly, got to think about use. Are you going to make sure that the display you create is used every day? Is it going to be something that you refer to in lessons that becomes part of your teaching, or is it a display that you've just put up to look pretty? The evidence and those that are passionate about displays saying it should be used on a daily basis. However, it shouldn't foster reliance. We do not want students to become reliant on it. So, for example, if you've got a timeline at the front of your class or a word wall, it's great for novice students to help with their early stages of writing or their chronological understanding, but eventually you want to break that scaffold away and students to become independent and not have to use the word wall or the timeline. So I suppose it's thinking about, could you take that down throughout the year? Now, obviously, I know that's a lot of work, but that's what one of the blogs I've read to suggest is think about kind of reducing the scaffolding over the year. Thirdly, they are a great way to highlight, high expectations in class. Showing work on the walls kind of highlights to students what is valued in the classroom, and that you are proud, and they should be proud of the work they produce. And you think about the trickle-down effect of that. If students feel proud and happy in your classroom, that has a great impact on behaviour, engagement, and obviously probably a slightly tangible effect on progress, doesn't it? If they are happy and want to work hard and feel valued in the classroom. And displays are a really good way of doing that. And lastly, this idea of noise, distraction, reducing the redundancy effect is that, and linking to this diagram here, is that you should try and keep up to 50% of walls clear. And those that you do use should be really focused on the curriculum that you are teaching in the classroom. Everything should be relevant. And the colours you should use should be quite consistent. They should try and keep things similar, again, to reduce extraneous loading, too much noise, as we call it. So I'm going to move on to some ideas for using it in the classroom really briefly. So one of the ones that I really love using, and I've actually got 3 maps in my classroom. For example, this American West one here is, I think maps are a great tool. Yes, history is the best subject, but geography is pretty damn important. And understanding the geopolitical, the spatial history is really powerful. And using a map like this American West one, students can see the vast scale of the American West. You can use it to plot the track of, for example, the Oregon Trail, the California Gold Rush, the development of the Transcontinental Railroad, and they are a really powerful tool to get students to understand. I've got another one for the Anglo-Saxon England, and we can use it to highlight the march that Harold Godwinson had to do north to the Viking and Tostig's invasion, and then obviously back down south to William of Normandy's invasion in 1066. Maps are really powerful and a great way to, again, it's that idea of something that you can use every day. Another good map as well is kind of showing the world scale of the history that you teach. So my other map that I've got is a world map, and it's got similar information to this around it, showing where the history we study is. So where Vietnam is in the world, where the Silk Road is, where the Western African countries were, where slaves, the enslaved Africans were taken from. Really powerful maps, and you can use them all the time. Secondly, timelines. Now, I don't have a timeline in my classroom because it's on the big to-do list. My colleague next door has a wonderful one, and that's my to-do list, is to get that put up on my wall. But timelines are a wonderful way of, highlighting the topics you study. So, for example, this one at the top here, this is our history that a school does in their curriculum. So it's from their first topic all the way up to the modern age. And I really like that because students can place what they're studying within that timeline. And it really adds to that big picture understanding and chronological narrative of history that you are doing. They're really great for that. Other ones you can use, though, are more topic specific. So you could do ones for like medicine through time. And there's 2 examples here that I've picked. And being a medicine through time teacher, it's the one that I'm most comfortable talking about. Is the one on the left is kind of a working wall that kind of that students can add to and talk about when you're thinking about the different types of treatment in obviously the 4 periods. And then the one on the right, again, is the great skill if you have a giant blank wall or a divider, a partition in your room, where you can create kind of a working timeline that you can add to throughout the course that you're doing it. And it's really powerful here. And obviously, this example of medicine through time is looking at life expectancy and medical progress through the time. And you can constantly add to that and refer to it. And again, it's a tool that you will be using every week in lesson. And if you've got a massive wall space, wonderful for that. Another little shout out to the UCL Holocaust CPD. They do a wonderful activity where they do a timeline of the Holocaust with many, many layers, looking at individual stories, the role of the Nazi government. And again, you can do a similar activity using a timeline on the wall. So definitely check that out. Word walls are another one. Again, it's that idea of providing vocabulary, either history specific, tier 2, even tier 3 specific, history specific words that you can provide on the wall, so students can improve in it and widen their vocabulary. You can use extentometers, so you can have a huge big like continuum on your wall where you can which can provide students with ways to agree or disagree with arguments. You can have a changeometer. I don't have a picture of my one on the board, unfortunately, but a lot of you have used this extentometer changeometer before, like a thermometer with varying scales of agree or significant. Think about change, radical at the top, all the way down to minimal or limited. Again, you can use this and you can refer to it, saying, well, where would we put the change that occurred in Norman England? Where would we put this on this changeometer? Again, you can use it almost every day, and it's a nice way for students to build the vocab that they use. Now, a lot of you have been doing wonderful work with the Freya model. Obviously, Tom Patterson's done an excellent video for history how-tos on this. But you can also highlight the keywords for each topic that you are really hammering home. Maybe like 10 keywords that you've got for a topic like the Cold War, like détente. You could have those Freya model words that you're really hammering on your board, and you can constantly refer to them throughout the lesson. And then lastly, this kind of the month style display. This is kind of a way of like highlighting some of the history topics, the historians, and the wider history that you are engaging in your curriculum. So you could have, for example, one on local history. So this excellent display here is talking about local women who were involved in the suffrage movement, local to the school. You could either do profile to historians, and there's 3 examples here really, which I think are excellent, where they have examples of a historian, unpicking the work of historians and the work and those that we are using within the classroom. So you've got Susanna Liscombe here, Akala, the fantastic Akala with his Natives book. And I really like this this one here from Kurt Evans. What are we learning from this year? What historian is teaching us this year? And it's kind of uncovering that idea that historians are like, people that we don't really encounter and we don't really know. They are in this classroom. This is the person. This is Mary Beard. This is the book we're looking at. And providing some history about them brings them home and makes students engage in them a little bit more, I think. And this middle one here, I suppose it's not in the of the month style, but it's kind of a meanwhile elsewhere. And I know a lot of people have been doing meanwhile elsewhere displays too. This is what's going on around the world whilst we are studying this topic. So meanwhile in America, this is what's happening. And I just think that's, again, a really great idea to add kind of more of a diverse curriculum with regards to looking at around the world at everything that's going on. And a lot of these are ones that are stolen from people on Twitter, so thank you for everyone who puts up their wonderful displays that they use. And the last one I want to look at, which kind of doesn't fit into any of these categories, but I thought it's worthy of a mention, is the one that I saw on Hugh Richards' wall at Huntington School up in York. This is on the One Big History Department blog, and it's it's a display that kind of unpicks the work that historians do, and kind of and also a journey that you as a historian will engage in through your time at school. And I just think it's fantastic because it highlights the work of historians, how history works, and the idea that historical evidence and interpretations can be many things. You've got objects, documents, buildings here, And I just think it's really a really great way to unpick this. And this display is free. You can get this on the One Big History Department website. So to finish off, really, I just thought I'd provide a bit of further reading. You've got Sally Thorne's great book, Becoming an Outstanding History Teacher, and that really actually gave me some ideas for the displays I use. For example, the extentometer and the changeometer on my wall came from Sally Thorne's book, so thank you, Sally. And I think a lot of people are really into dual coding at the moment, and some of you have probably read Oliver's book here. Definitely worth reading, even if it's just to take some small tips about, make a display, so minimum 24-point font. And that is that. So thank you very much for listening and watching this today. Please do visit the site, mrthorntonteach.com/how-to. Subscribe to the His TV channel on Tom's YouTube channel. And there's also some amazing other great history videos and explanations, for example, by Dan Warner, meanwhile, talking through the Vietnam War. Fantastic for your GCSE students. And please do get involved. If you have an idea that you would like to share and have hosted on History How-Tos, please do get in touch. And thank you. Cheers.